Alright, I'm going to talk about lens filters. Lens filters could be more important than you think. Well, first of all, you might not even know what a lens filter is. So a lens filter, there's different kinds that do different things. But essentially, it's usually a thing that screws onto the front of the lens, or maybe you have like this little matte box, which is like a square thing that goes on the lens, and then you slide in the filters into that matte box square thing that's on the front of your lens or whatever, or positioned in front of your lens, etc. So anyway, there's different kinds of filters. I'm not an expert on filters, but there's some that's more of like a style thing, like a black pro mist filter. It seems to be pretty popular. I'm not exactly sure, 100% sure what it does, but I think it kind of helps with making it smooth out. There's a fly in here. I think it kind of helps. I don't even know. It's like maybe makes the image look a bit more cinematic because maybe it smooths out the highlight roll off. I could be wrong. If you want to know what a black pro mist filter does, feel free to look up somebody on YouTube that knows it better than I do. Then there's like a glimmer glass filter and probably a bunch of different stuff and different filters. There's also ND filters, which this I know a little bit more about. I'm not an expert on it, but I know a little bit more about it. So an ND filter, think of it like sunglasses for your camera, or I guess a sunglass for your camera, since there's just the one lens. But anyway, it's like, there's that mosquito. So basically, if it's really bright and you don't want to change your camera settings any further, but you want to make the image darker, you could put on an ND filter that has a certain amount of stops of ND. There's also like variable NDs, which as far as I understand, you would just like rotate it and it would get brighter or darker, or it would, the stops would increase or decrease or whatever. However you want to properly explain that. So if you want to let more light in, you would rotate it a certain way, and if you want to let less light in, you would rotate it a different way. And so then that basically kind of helps you to maybe manage your exposure with an additional technique, depending on what camera settings you want to have. Practical example of why you might want to use an ND filter, and I saw this from, I believe, Sarah Dici, I think is the name. She's on YouTube, and she talked about ND filters, I think, or an ND filter or something like that, one time in one of her YouTube videos. But essentially, a reason why you might want to use an ND filter is if you wanted to keep your shot at f2.8, but it's really bright outside, and let's say for some reason you don't want to adjust other camera settings any further, or maybe you're kind of at your limit for how much you can adjust them for certain things or whatever. But say you still want to make the image a bit darker, then you would have to use the ND filter to darken the image so that you could still have that same aperture without the image looking too bright, essentially. Does that make sense? So anyway, lens filters might be an additional thing, whether for style or more for function. But then again, the function maybe is to help support certain style. Might be worth looking into if it's something that kind of helps you with what you're trying to do. So I'm going to end that there. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. If you want to join my Skool community, the link is in the description. Thanks for watching.